Hi, I'm Eric Michael Cap for iLuvBurbank.com, and welcome to this video podcast. We're going to just do a very quick summary of what's going on in Burbank. We've been on a little bit of a sabbatical. Hope you had a wonderful summer. We did. And let's just talk a little bit about some of the things that are going on in Burbank. Obviously, the big story the last few weeks was the fire. Tremendous job by our fire department, police, and just the community as a whole. It was so refreshing to see the community come together instead of arguing about Chick-fil-A and whatever else is going on that we disagree in, just working together and coming together, donating food and wanting to help people who were being evacuated. The donations that overwhelmed the fire department, that was so encouraging. I was so proud to be a Burbanker or Burbankian, depending on your preference. We had the Calvary Chapel Relief Ministry go up there, I think it was on Saturday night, and feed the firemen. They fed a whole, I don't know how many that they did there, but it was Patrick and his crew did a wonderful job. It was fantastic. So kudos to Burbank Fire Department and all the fire departments across Los Angeles who helped put that out. I mean, it could have been much, much worse. It really could have been. So there was quite a bit of last Tuesday's council meeting devoted to the fire, and we saw pictures and stories from our fire chief and police department and so on and so forth. So that was the big story. Aside from that, I haven't watched a council meeting since before the election. I was watching this because the MWD California water fix was on the agenda. It was an item that I was very interested in. In fact, I sent a letter to the city council in support of that. I was a little surprised that the item was actually on the agenda. I couldn't understand it, why they just weren't supporting it, because they had supported it in the past. And it turns out that an outside group of people had written to our council and Emily Gabel-Luddy, and I think Sharon, and expressed some concerns, and that's why it was being agendized. Thankfully, in the end, despite a number of speakers from these outside organizations, the City Council majority did vote to affirm their support for the California water fix. I'm going to include a link to my letter in support in the show notes for this, so you could see why I'm supporting it. It was a 3-1 vote, with Sharon Springer not supporting it, which I was disappointed in. And again, the thing that disappoints me a little bit was that this item was only on the agenda because outside groups were lobbying the city for it, and that's a concern I have. In fact, that's a concern I have in general right now in the city and the current city council makeup, because that wasn't the only issue. And there are only a couple of things that were discussed during the oral communications, but we had another item, again, an outside agenda item being raised by Constantine Anthony to change Columbus Day to Indigenous People Day, because, you know, that's the most important issue facing our city council. I mean, forget about our traffic, forget about all the impending development that's on the slate and the speeding that's going on, the crime. Forget about all of that. The most important issue for some people is getting rid of all traces of American history. It's amazing. And that's my fear. We have a council now that seems to be, in some part at least, more focused on majoring on minors and dealing with what are ideological, agenda-driven issues rather than dealing with the business of the city of Burbank. And that's dangerous, in my opinion. And that item is going to be fast-tracked on our agenda, with Emily Gabel-Luddy, Will Rogers, and Sharon Spring all asking for it to come back as an urgency item. Go figure. Anyway, aside from that, we've got a lot of development coming up in the city. Obviously, the biggest one, the old IKEA site. We've got proposals there for that and the adjacent property that's been purchased by the same company. That's going to be looking at around about 1,100 units in total. And these are not affordable housing. If it was affordable housing, at least it would meet a need in our community. No, this is going to be market rate housing, essentially, with some micro units, I guess they're calling them now, instead of affordable housing. And that's just one project. We've got other things coming up. I think another 150 that Cusimano is building as part of a hotel project and a residential project. We've got the Pickwick Gardens It looks like those folks are going to be coming before the council asking for them to rezone that property so that they can develop it and build more condos, because I guess we just need more condos. I'm opposed to that. I'm opposed to the IKEA project as well as it stands right now for the old site. I'm going to urge the City Council, and I hope you will join me in saying no to that rezoning. It's their property and they're free to develop it as they wish within the parameters of the current code and the current general plan, which was just updated not that long ago. So I'm not in favor of that. The only rezoning I would be in favor of, it would be something that would maybe allow a church to build on the property or a portion of that property if they can. But it's zoned for amusement and certain types of uses, and I believe whatever goes in there needs to be consistent with what it's already zoned for. And again, with the IKEA project, if you're wondering why there is so much development in Burbank, let me just give you a real quick answer. Los Angeles passed a voter initiative not that long ago that requires all new development to have affordable housing component, which is, I believe, 15%. So if anyone wants to build something new, at least 15% of those units have to be what's called affordable or moderate priced housing, which is about 80% of market rate. So, of course, developers aren't wanting now to develop so much in Los Angeles. In Glendale, they actually have a moratorium on development. So there's nothing going on there because they already developed a whole bunch of stuff there, such as that monstrosity there on Brand, the gray monstrosity with the orange, if you've seen that. And, well, the residents, they don't want any more development there. So they're not developing there. They also raise their cost of development there. So they have development impact fees there now. They're around about $9,000 per unit to offset the cost of infrastructure, which I agree with. We don't have that here. So Burbank is pretty attractive. So you're seeing all kinds of development being proposed for this city. And if we, the residents, don't rise up and make our voices heard and start going to our city council meetings, writing to our city council, lobbying them, this city is going to be unrecognizable. It really is. And I know many people who have already left the city. Many are planning to, because the city isn't what it was. And I understand there's going to be development. I get that. But it's got to be reasonable. It's got to be within the character of the city, within the character of the neighborhoods. And we need to factor in the cost to our infrastructure, the cost to our schools. And these things are not being factored into. And as a parent who has a child who attends Burbank High, I can't even imagine what the traffic is going to be like there with the 1,100 apartments, a hotel there where the Office Depot is, and it's just going to be gridlock. That area is not built. It's just not built to accommodate that mass of people and the traffic there. It's just not. And the people living there aren't going to be going to work on their bikes. You may have a handful that will. Everyone there is going to have a car. Everybody there, every apartment's going to need 2 spaces. You're going to need spaces for visitors. I just cannot fathom that. And again, 0 affordable housing, a handful of micro units as is proposed right now. So residents, listen, please speak up. Please contact your city council members. If you see them at a city event, speak to them. Listen, be courteous, be civil, be polite, but let them know, listen, I'm concerned about this. I don't think this is good for the city of Burbank. I don't think this is good for the people of Burbank. And I want to urge you to act in the residents' best interest, not the developers. And let's see if we can't come up with a win-win for everybody, where the developers can develop, but on a much, much smaller scale, where we can get some affordable housing and deal with a real need in this city. We need more affordable housing. And if you're going to build something, as far as I'm concerned, we ought to have a 10% mandate minimum for any new development in this city. But that involves the council making changes to the general plan and just leading and just not accepting that this is this is the way it is, and we can't do anything, and it's the market, and waiting for Sacramento to provide some kind of mechanism for them to be able to build more affordable housing. It's just not going to happen. So those are some thoughts as to what's coming up in the city of Burbank, and I have a lot more to say about those projects as they get closer to planning board and of course coming before the city council. So that's what's going on in Burbank. I'm going to be making a separate video talk about all the great things that are going on in the faith-based community and in the churches, so stay tuned for that. I'm Eric Michael Catt for iLuvBurbank.com. And if you like this video, please subscribe to my channel and follow us on social media, on Facebook and on WordPress to keep up to date with all that's going on in Burbank. Thanks, God bless.